If your team got guaranteed money, tell them call me.
Whoop. Make me say, my. I done been around the world.
Yeah, I was made for this.
Player Performance with J.A. Cavalier.
Hey, welcome to Player Performance College Basketball Edition on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. I had to mention that it is March because it's March and it's March Madness, and it's what we live for, really. Myself, Guns. Guns says that he is March. I don't know if I'm March, but I do pretty well. So I was looking it up yesterday and saw, last year, just for the month of March, all regular season and tournament games, my win rate was 62%, which, I'm not here to, pat myself on the back, but, that's pretty solid. And I know Guns probably in that same range. It's why, if you're watching today, whether you're live or watching this recorded, it's why you should hit the like button, hit subscribe, and, find us on all of our social media. Myself, why lose _coach at Instagram, why lose Coach Rick on Telegram. And for Guns Picks, it's just why lose _guns on both of those, Instagram and Telegram. You should also follow J.A. Cavalier. He doesn't bet much college basketball. When he does, it's big and it's going to win. So, all three of us, we're very good at what we do. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate you following us. Again, hit that like button, subscribe. And with that said, we'll get into today. I will mention again, since it is March, this is the final week of the regular season in college basketball. Sunday will be the last day that you'll have a regular season game. There are some tournaments that have started already. Both the Horizon League and the Sun Belt are in conference tournament play right now. 4 more will start tomorrow. I think it's the Ohio Valley, Big South, Atlantic Sun, and the Summit League start their tournaments tomorrow. And as we get further into the month, you're going to see them all. And then it's going to be Selection Sunday. And then before you know it, we're going to be playing tournament games. So with that said, let's get to today's card. I've got 3 games featuring ranked opponents. I believe there are 12 ranked teams playing today. None of the games have ranked opponents playing each other. However, a couple of interesting games on the card. I picked 3 of them, and then I'll share a best bet with you at the end. We'll kick it off in the SEC. Game 1, we've got Alabama traveling to Georgia. Interesting game. Interesting rivalry between these two schools. Obviously, the football rivalry is huge, but the SEC isn't just a football conference anymore. I mean, there's some great teams out there in the SEC as far as college basketball. They probably will get 10, maybe 11 teams in the NCAA tournament, including both of these teams. Georgia's kind of still hanging around, but in the latest bracketology, Georgia was listed as a 9 seed. What's really, really interesting is you look at the line in this game. Alabama favored by 1.5. Totals 179.5. Overnight last night, Circa, which one of the sharper books that's out there, Circa had Georgia as a 1.5 point favorite. So I find that interesting. Of course, that got pounded right away with Alabama money, but books are expecting a tight game, and should be. Like I said, it's a rivalry game. It's senior night for Georgia. It's the final home game of the season for the Bulldogs, and Georgia. I'm probably guilty of this, as many of you are as well. You probably forgot about Georgia, which I did, because they lost 6-7 games in a row. Had a great start to the season. They were ranked in the top 25 at one point, and still they're 20-9, but they're just 8-8 in the conference because, like I said, they've lost 6-7 conference games in a row at one point. However, if you look at what they've done recently, Georgia, they've won 3 of their last 4. Not impressive victories, of course, but they have won 3 of those last 4, and they're still hanging on that line. I think the latest bracketology has them as a 9 seed. Alabama, you can argue that they're, one of the best teams in the country right now. They're playing their best basketball of the season. They've won 8 straight, and that includes Saturday's win. Saturday's win is probably the best of them all. They played a ranked Tennessee team on Tennessee's floor. Tennessee kind of owns that rivalry over the last, decade. And Alabama hung right with them. Tennessee, of course, if you remember Guns and myself on the podcast Friday night, I like that game to go under, as most of the Alabama Tennessee games have, and of course it did. But Alabama hung with them and ended up getting the win. I think it was 71-69. Alabama also pretty good on the road this year. 9 true road games, and they're 7-2 straight up. Also, they kind of own this series as well. 7-1 straight up and against the spread in the last 8 games against Georgia. Georgia is pretty good at home, though, as most teams are. Most teams just play better at home, at the college level. So home court advantage kind of does, give you something in the college game as compared to the NBA. Georgia 13-4 at home, but they're only 8-9 against the spread in those home games. So, you can argue that Georgia's at home. They've got a little bit of advantage playing at home on senior night. However, Alabama, on a roll. I mean, they are. And, the thing to think about, too, for Alabama is they haven't wrapped up the number 2 seed in the SEC tournament yet. So, if you're thinking, they're looking ahead or they're going to take it easy, keep that in mind, that they still, they got something to play for, and that's the number 2 seed in that SEC tournament. So, line wise, I mean, if you put these two on a neutral floor, you'd probably expect Alabama to be favored by 4.5, 5.5, even maybe. So, Georgia opening at 1.5 on Circa, and now the line at 1.5. I find that interesting. I don't know that I want to be on a side. So I think the big thing you want to look at is the total. And why not? Because this total is 179.5. The books are telling you, hey, we expect a lot of points. And the total did open at 178.5, so it is up a point. I don't know if it's going to move anymore, but both these teams, I mean, I can go through, I'll go through the list with you, right? Alabama, of course, leads the country in scoring, 92.6 points per game. Georgia is top 5. I think they're third, and they average 90.2. You want to talk tempo? Alabama, number 3 in the country, adjusted tempo. Georgia, number 22. You're going to see a ton of possessions tonight. Average possession length is another metric. I don't think I've mentioned that on any of the shows this year yet, but how long do they have the ball for before they get a shot off and either score or, it goes the other way? Alabama's 7th in that metric. So, Alabama likes to run up the floor, jack a 3. If they don't jack a 3, they're got cutters and whatever to get the ball inside. So they're 7th in average possession length. Georgia, 12th. So these two teams they like to run up and down the floor and score. And they both do. And then what really helps the over in this case is neither team is very good defensively. I shouldn't say they're not very good, but they don't put an emphasis on defense. So just straight up points allowed. These are two of the worst in the nation. Alabama ranks 356th in opponent points per game, 83.6. So on average game, they're going to give up 84 points. It's a ton. And that's, of course, why they got to score 93. Georgia ranks 309th. They give up 78.8 points per game on average. So, when you give up 80, you got to score. I think if you look historically at this matchup, I just went back 3 years because Mike White, who's the Georgia head coach, used to be at Florida, now he's at Georgia. This is his 4th year at Georgia. This will be the 4th time that these two teams have played with Mike White as the head coach. If you look back, the total in the first game was 153.5, and it went over. The second time they played a couple years ago, total was up to 166.5. They played last year, it was 162. Both of those, the last 2 games, went under the total. And now all of a sudden the total's it's pushing 180. So I think the books are sending a message. The only concern would be Georgia and the way that Alabama has played them in the past. So the 3 games that Alabama has played against Mike White, they kind of blowout fashion that Alabama's won them all, and Georgia only scored 69, 76, and 59 points in those games. So, however, I would also point to Mike White and what he's done with Georgia this season. Obviously it's his best team and it's his best offense too. If you look back, his first year, they averaged about 75 points a game. The second year, they were closer to 76. And now, over 90 points a game. So it's his best offensive team. The number at 179.5 right now, I'm leaning towards playing the over. And I know there's people out there thinking there's no way that, both these teams get to 90, but I can see a way where they both get there. Now, I only lean on the game total, the over 179.5, because I think the better play is one that I bring up and one that you've seen quite a bit. And I know some people can't get it. So the alternative to this bet, of course, is the over 179.5. But if you have access to DraftKings, you go to this game, Alabama, Georgia, you want to swipe all the way to the right and look at team props, and you'll go down and you'll find a bet that's called both teams to score X. And, if you like both teams to score, but you're kind of, a little bit leery of that huge number, there's still a way to get there with this bet. And that's both teams to score. And right now at DraftKings at 85.5, you'll pay minus 105, which is even better than, playing the over 179 at minus 110. So you get minus 105, both teams to score 85.5. So that means both teams need to get to 86. Well, Georgia's done that in 17 out of 29 games this season, 3 out of their last 4. And as I mentioned, most teams play better at home. They've scored at least 86 points in 14 of their 17 home games against an Alabama team, remember, that gives up an average of almost 85 points a game. Alabama, on the other end, nation's leading scoring team, needs to get to 86. They've done that 22 of 29 games this season. Most of the games they haven't, like Saturday's game, Tennessee's an elite defense and plays a more methodical style of basketball, which is why Alabama landed in the 70s. Alabama has hit 86 or more in 7 of its last 8. And even though they're on the road, they've scored at least 86 in 6 of their 9 true road games this season. So best play on this game right now for me is both teams to score 85.5. I am also, and take this for what it's worth. You might want to look at it. I am also going to take a look at playing both of these teams to get to 90. So I'm going to play both teams to score 89.5 or go over 89.5. And that right now is priced at plus 190. So if you don't have access to that bet, you're going to play the full game over 179.5. Best bet for myself, Coach Rick, both teams to score 85.5, Alabama, Georgia. That game tips off tonight at 6:30 in Georgia. On to game 2. Game 2, also an SEC game, also featuring one of your top-ranked teams in the country. And game 2 is Mississippi State at Florida. Florida ranked, I believe, number 5 in most polls right now. And it's interesting that you'll hear the argument that Florida right now is a number 2 seed in the latest bracketology, with UConn, getting that last number 1 seed. People will argue back and forth. Well, Florida's better, but you got to go back. It's what I go back to in college football all the time is, what happened on the floor. And remember, these two teams did play early in the season. UConn did win that game, and I know it's months ago, but they did beat them. So as of now, Florida's still a number 2 seed, which, if I'm Todd Golden, I'd rather be the 2 seed and wear that chip on the shoulder the entire tournament. But this game tonight, this matchup, Florida 14-2 in the conference. They clinched at least a share of the conference title with an absolute stomping of Arkansas on Saturday. That was a game that, if you recall, on Player Performance with Guns, I gave out what eventually was my max bet. I believed that Florida would absolutely crush Arkansas, and I had Florida in the first half. I think it was -4.5 or 5.5, and they covered that easily. It got off to a great start, which they typically do. And then they rode at home, scoring 111 points against Arkansas. Florida has not actually secured the number 1 seed, though, in these SEC tournament. So if you're thinking, well, it's Mississippi State and they're terrible and, they're just going to, put it on cruise control, I don't think so. And I don't think Todd Golden will let that happen. A win tonight puts them one step closer to securing a number 1 seed and, avoids them having to play, 4 or 5 games to win the SEC title. Mississippi State, the best word that I can find, I guess, is awful, terrible. Chris Jans is actually a great basketball coach, but they're just bad. They're 3-11 in their last 14 games. They've won 5 of 16 SEC games. They're not the worst, but they're sure close. They've lost their last 3 games in a row, and they lost them because for some reason they just forgot how to play defense in Starkville. They give up 88, 100, and 97 in their last 3 games. And then, overall, they're one of the worst defenses in the conference and the nation, really. They rank 310th in points allowed, and they give up 79.3. So anytime, I always mention, if you give up 70 or less, you're probably a pretty good defense. But if you give up, 80 or more, like you got issues. They are not good on the defensive end. Mississippi State is not a good rebounding team. So, I always talk about 4 factors, and, one of those factors is, involves rebounding. Mississippi State ranks 349th in total rebounds per game. There's only 365 teams in the nation. That's bad. But the number one team in the country that pulls the most rebounds per game, University of Florida, and that's why they're considered one of the best teams in the country. That's not all of it. I feel like they're the complete package, though. Like I said, best rebounding team in the country, 4th in defensive rating, according to Ken Pom, 11th in offensive rating, according to Ken Pom. They've won 9 games in a row. They stumbled against Auburn. I think that game was at home too. But since then, 9-0. Good teams win, great teams cover. Florida is 12-3 against the spread in its last 15 games. They're 19-1 in their last 20 at home. And again, teams play better at home. They play better defense. They score more at home. I know it's a big line. It's, opened at 23. I think it's 22.5 at most books right now. You probably don't want to lay that. I don't. Even though it is Florida and Mississippi State, I do think Florida blows them out. I don't know if they get to 23. How would I play the game? Well, I looked at Florida's team total because Mississippi State is not a great defensive basketball team. But Florida's team total 91.5. They got to score 92 points, which they don't do a lot, but they have gotten there. 11 out of 29 games that they've hit 92 or more. Half their home games, 7 out of 14, they've scored at least 92. However, they've scored at least 92 in 3 of their last 4 home games, including the smoke fest over Arkansas on Saturday. They scored 111. They put up 92 against Kentucky at home, and they scored 100 against Alabama. So the potential's there. They do play at tempo, more up tempo style of game, and they'll control it against Mississippi State. However, at 91.5, I'm not there yet. Put it that way. The other end, I could see this to be more likely is Mississippi State's team total sitting at 68.5 in this series. So, if you go back to the 3 or 4 games that Chris Jans has been around at Mississippi State, over the last 3 seasons, these two teams have played 4 times. Mississippi State scored 68, 70, 69, and 59. So Florida has held them, in check pretty much in this series. And this is, I would say, this year is Todd Golden's best defense. Obviously, being having the 4th best defensive rating in the country. So, Mississippi State under 68.5. I could lean on that one more than Florida getting up and over 92 or 91.5. Just because late in the game, they're going to pull everybody and play backups. But I think that tells me that I think the best play for right now, I'm not, it's not on my card yet, but I like the full game under at 160.5. 8 of the last 11 Florida games have gone under, and that's because they're just so good defensively. And then on the other end, you've got 8 of the last 12 Mississippi State games have gone under, even though they've given up 80 or more in most of those games. Like I said, the last 3, 88, 197. Yet some of those games have still gone under. And that's because their offense is just very inconsistent. So, Florida, like I said, they won 9 in a row. They've given up, I believe, if I remember correctly, 6 of those games, they give up 71 points or less. I don't think Mississippi State gets to 70, but I'm not sure that, Florida gets up and over, 91.5. So I do think, though, even if they do hit 90, I don't think Mississippi State gets to 70, which is why I like the under 160.5 in this game. We'll see if it makes the card. So there's 2 SEC games. There's a couple more. Tennessee plays at South Carolina. There's a couple more on the card, but our final game that I'll mention and give you some analysis in, we go to the ACC, and it's game 3 is Wake Forest at Virginia. Virginia, I'm pretty sure most books now have it at minus 14.5. It was 13.5 earlier. I think everybody's up to 14.5. It's a big number, and it should be. Wake Forest is they're a very mediocre basketball team. I think at the beginning of the season, the so-called experts, I think, thought that Wake Forest, this might be the year where they kind of break through and hit 20 wins, but I don't know if that'll happen. To see what they do in the conference tournament, but they have won 4 of their last 6 games, and they did cover 4 of the 6. The biggest win out of that, that set of games there was Clemson. Clemson, a ranked team. And I remember looking at it on the card. I'm like, Clemson's at Wake Forest, but they're a 3.5-point favorite. And I thought there's no way I'm touching that game because, I think Wake Forest, if I was going to play it, I would have played Wake Forest. And of course, the Demon Deacons won that game. But it's only their second win as an underdog this season. When they're a dog, like, they're only going to win if they're a short dog, number one. But they're 2-11 as an underdog. And in this case, minus 14.5, like, Virginia's clearly the better team here. Wake Forest is not good on the road either. They're only 2-6 straight up in their true road games. They're only 2-6 against the spread in those games as well. The bigger issue is they actually lost their point guard. Not last game, but the game before. Kid went down with an ankle injury. I think his last name's Calmes. He averaged 10 points, 5 assists a game. Kind of the engine of the offense. Wake Forest did beat Syracuse on Saturday without him, but that's Syracuse. Virginia is much better than Syracuse. So I think they're going to be hurting without that kid, especially on the road, where they're, like I said, they're only 2-6. I think they're going to have some issues, especially on the offensive end. And that is reflected in Wake Forest's team total. This has to be, I don't have the numbers, but this has to be Wake Forest's lowest team total of the year. They're a decent offensive team. They're scoring the 75 points per game range. So it's not like they're terrible, but their team total tonight 66.5. So that's telling you something right there, and that's just a reflection of how good Virginia is defensively. I really think Virginia is one of the most underrated or overlooked teams in the country. They're 25-4, and I know they got their ass kicked on Saturday, and that was my only loss Saturday on my card. I had Virginia. I thought they'd play well, excuse me, in the first half, and at home. In a big game against Duke, I thought they'd, kind of rise to the occasion. And really, if they would have had a couple of threes fall, I think they shot 1 for 10 from three, in the first half. So if they had had a couple of those fall, I think they could have hung in that game, but they did. They got smoked. And, Duke's just damn good, right? But I think Virginia could be the second best team in the ACC. 25-4. In the latest bracketology, they're a 4 seed, but fine. Like I said with Florida, take that and wear it on your shoulder and get after it. But Virginia, why are they kind of overrated or underrated or overlooked? And I think it goes back to the beginning of the season. Their performance last year, and then what did they do to get better? Blah blah blah. But they've really had a great season. The defense is not. It's not Tony Bennett's pack line, we're going to hold you to 51 points, type of thing. But they're still top 50. They're 41st in points allowed at 68. And then if you look at a bunch of the metrics, like they're outstanding. They're 10th in 3-point field goal percentage against. They are top 10 in opponent effective field goal percentage. And they are top 10 in 2-point field goal percentage as well. And they're top 10 in 2-point because they're freaking huge inside and they're athletic. They're number 2 in the country in block percentage. They block a ton of shots. So if you're Wake Forest, how do you want to play it? Like, how do you want to attack them? You want to go inside? Okay, well, they're going to block a bunch of your shots. You want to run around on the 3-point line and jack threes? Well, they're going to run you off of it because that's what they do. So I think that Wake Forest really struggles here. Virginia also, I think the thing that gets really overlooked is Virginia's offense is really good. I mean, how many times in the last 10 years have you heard, well, Virginia's averaging 82 points a game? They haven't. They were never a team that averaged 80, but now they are. They shoot the three pretty well, 36, 37%. And if you haven't seen this kid, De Ridder, he's from, I don't know, Netherlands, Germany, somewhere. He's a European kid. He's 6'9". He's 22 years old and a freshman. So he's experienced. And I'll tell you, he's better fundamentally than anybody on the floor tonight, because European kids, like, they're better than American kids in the fundamentals of basketball because they learn them young and they develop them. But he averages 16 points, 6 boards. He will take you down on the block and dunk on you, or he will step out, come off a screen, and jack threes all night. So Virginia, very good offensively, and probably, better defensively. I know they're coming off the loss to Duke, and I know they have Virginia Tech on Saturday at home. That's their final home game. But I think they're just too good. So I think you'll see one of two things, and I'm not sure where I'm going to lean on this game, but that team total under has some value, I think, because it hasn't been this low for Wake Forest. But Wake Forest has only gone under 67 points twice all season. So that number, I think, is telling you something. However, Virginia has actually held 5 of its last 8 opponents to 67 points or less. So, I think there's value there. Will that find its way to my card? I'm not sure yet. What I like more is just the full game under. I don't think Wake gets to 70. So, in a slower paced game, I think, you'll see the under 148.5 as the better play right now. Adjusted tempo, Virginia's 270 in the nation. They average less than 70 possessions per game, and even fewer when they play at home, because they just, like I've said all year, home teams typically control tempo. So I think you'll see what has happened in 7 of Virginia's last 9 games, and that is that they've cashed on the under. I think you make this one 8 out of 10. And just a couple things to support that. 18 of Virginia's 29 games have gone under the total. 10 of their 15 home games under the total. I think they put the squeeze on Wake Forest tonight and go under 148.5. Those are your 3 games. Hopefully, I've given you something you can use and take to, eventually make it onto your card and put some green in your pocket tonight. I do have one more for you, and that is tonight's best bet. So tonight's best bet. Before I get to that, I'll mention this. I do have a max bet tonight. Last night, cashed the first max bet in March. Kind of off the wall, like what the heck is that, right? And it was Sacramento State, in a conference that you probably don't watch a lot, but Sacramento State was at home last night, and it was senior night. It was their final home game, and a kid named Mikey Williams was playing in that game. Mikey Williams is their leading scorer, best player. He's a stud. He missed 7 games in a row, and Sacramento State lost all of them. And it was a tight spread last night. I took the Hornets to just win, and they did fairly easily. So I cashed that max bet. Got one tonight. We're looking to cash that one again. Max bets have been doing pretty well as of late. We're in that 63 to 65% win rate over the last 2 to 3 weeks. So keep that in mind. Tonight's max bet, you can get that $49. I'll have a couple best bets along with that. If the max bet doesn't hit, you get a free week of all of my plays. Tonight's best bet is, if you looked at today's Why Lose page, whylose.com/coach, I had a free pick there. It's Kansas and Arizona State. Kansas travels to, I believe it's Tempe, right, where they're at. And they'll take on the Sun Devils. They were 5.5-point favorites. I think before I come on here, I think it did go up to 6.5. I expect Kansas to win. And why? Well, it's because they play great defense. I mean, there's no doubt what they do. Very similar to Virginia that we just talked about. Kansas gives up 68.6 points a game. If you look at defensive rating, they're number 9 in the country, according to KenPom. And, what happens when you play Kansas? Well, they slow the game down and they suck the life out of you. And typically, Kansas games end up going under the total. So they've played 29 games this year. 20 of those games have gone under the total. 4 of their last 5. These two teams played last year, and I know it was it was at the Fog. It was in Kansas. But the Jayhawks held them to 55 points. And Arizona State's offense is nothing special. It's very inconsistent. Bobby Hurley's probably on his last legs as a head coach at Arizona State. Arizona State, I mean, typically they don't go under 70 points, but when they've played more elite defenses like Gonzaga early in the season, Gonzaga held them under 70. They play West Virginia, and West Virginia, whether you like them or not, they're very, very good defensively, and West Virginia held them, I believe, to their season low. So Kansas, I feel like, is better than both of those defenses, especially now at this point in the season. They're playing really well. So right now, total 151.5, and I know it's higher than it was, the last time that these two played, but I don't see how they get there. I don't know if Arizona State gets to 70. If they do, it's low 70s. I think Kansas wins the game, but best bet for tonight, Kansas, Arizona State, under 151.5. And that's going to do it. 34 minutes. We got you 3 games tonight, some analysis, some insights, some free picks, one best bet. Hopefully you can use those and benefit from them. Remember, follow all the guys here at Why Lose. We put a lot of time and effort into this, and it reflects in our bank accounts, and we want it to reflect in yours as well. For the team here, for Bernsey behind the scenes here, help me out, Coach Rick, Guns, Jay Cavalier, Luke Shuey, who I took a page from last night in my my free pick. For all the guys here, thank you. We appreciate you watching. Let's have a great night. Giddy up and win.
Cut my life into pieces. pieces. This is my last resort. Suffocation, no breathing, don't give a fuck.